Only if you want this, the Apache told the bride who became his by an unexpected twist of fate. She had never been one for quiet towns. The city had always been her world. The rushing crowds, the constant noise, the tall buildings that seemed to touch the sky. But something had drawn her to this place, far from everything she knew. Perhaps it was a need to escape, to step away from the predictable patterns of her life. Or perhaps it was curiosity, that restless pull that sometimes leads people into unknown places. Either way, she found herself standing at the edge of a small town that seemed almost forgotten, bordered by endless stretches of wild, untamed land. The air was different here. It carried the scent of pine and earth, crisp and alive, unlike the faint chemical tang of the city streets. Birds called from the trees, and a breeze whispered through the grass in a way that seemed almost deliberate, as if the land itself were alive, watching, waiting. She had rented a small cabin on the outskirts, a simple wooden structure that smelled faintly of cedar. It was modest, almost bare, but it was a sanctuary from the constant buzz of the city. For the first time in months, she felt the strange sense of calm that comes only when the world is quiet. She spent her first days wandering the town, meeting a few of the locals who were polite but distant. Everyone seemed to move at a different rhythm here, unhurried, as if time itself had slowed. Shops were small and simple, filled with items she had never seen before. Handmade baskets, carved figurines, and jars of honey that glistened like gold. There was no rush, no sense that she had to be somewhere, do something, or prove herself. It was almost unsettling. On the fourth morning, she decided to explore beyond the town, past the narrow dirt roads and into the forest that stretched endlessly. She walked without a map, trusting her instincts, drawn by the mystery of the wild. Sunlight streamed through the trees in golden shafts, illuminating the leaves in a way that made them seem almost magical. She felt a strange mixture of fear and excitement. The kind that comes with stepping into a world that does not belong to you, a world where the rules are different. Hours passed. She climbed over fallen logs, skirted around small streams, and marveled at the way nature seemed untouched, pure. Birds of every color flitted through the branches, and squirrels chased each other across the trunks. There was a rhythm here, a pattern she could feel in her chest even though she could not explain it. And then, just when she thought she had walked far enough, she saw him. He appeared almost out of nowhere, standing by a stream, washing his hands in the clear water. He was tall and strong, with hair as dark as the night and eyes that seemed to look straight into her soul. There was a calm authority about him, the kind that makes people aware of their own movements, as if they are being carefully observed.
He did not speak at first.
He simply watched, quiet and still, like a part of the forest itself. She froze, unsure of what to do. In the city, she could have walked past strangers without a second thought. Here, though, it felt different. There was a tension, a silent understanding that this encounter was not ordinary. Her heart raced, and for a moment she considered turning back. But curiosity, stubborn and insistent, pushed her forward. "Hello," she said, her voice small but steady. The sound seemed loud in the quiet of the forest. He tilted his head slightly, studying her with a gaze that was both sharp and patient. Then, slowly, he nodded, almost imperceptibly. "Hello," he replied, his voice deep and calm, carrying the weight of someone who rarely needed to speak, but did so when necessary. "You should not be here alone," she smiled nervously. "I'm fine."
"I'm just exploring." He looked at her, and for a moment there was silence.
"Des." Then he spoke again, the words deliberate.
Only if you want this. The phrase struck her in a way she did not understand at first.
It was not a question, not exactly. It was more like a warning, a key, and an invitation all at once. Something about the way he said it made her pause, made her heart beat faster. She wanted to ask what he meant, but she felt that words would ruin the moment, that understanding this was something she had to discover for herself. She noticed the way he moved, careful and precise, as if every gesture mattered. He was cleaning a small knife, not in a threatening way, but as though it were a tool he respected. His hands were strong and skilled, scarred in places that hinted at experience, at a life that had been lived in ways she could barely imagine. And yet, despite his strength, there was gentleness in the way he carried himself, a calm that seemed at odds with the harshness she imagined such a life might require. They spoke little after that. She asked questions about the forest, about the plants and animals, and he answered patiently, giving her enough information to survive without overwhelming her. There was a rhythm to their interaction, a silent dance of words and gestures. She found herself fascinated not just by what he said, but by the way he existed in the world, aware, present, entirely connected to the land in a way she had never known. Days passed, and she found herself returning to the same spot, hoping to see him again. Sometimes he was there, sometimes not, and each time he appeared, it was as if the forest itself had guided her. She learned to read the signs, the tracks in the dirt, the way the birds moved, the scent of the wind, and slowly, she began to understand the life he lived. It was hard, demanding, and beautiful in a way that made her question everything she thought she knew about the world.
She realized that the phrase he had said that first day, "Only if you want this," was more than a warning.
It was a test, a choice. She could leave, return to her life in the city with all its comforts and certainty, or she could step further into this world, into the unknown, and discover what it truly meant to be alive. The thought both terrified and thrilled her. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, she sat by the stream where she had first met him. He appeared silently, moving through the trees as though they were parting for him. He did not speak at first, just watched her with the same calm intensity she had come to recognize.
"You come here often," he said finally, and she laughed softly, embarrassed.
"I guess I do," she admitted. "I don't know why. Psst. It feels right." He nodded, as if he understood perfectly. "The land chooses some people," he said quietly. "It watches them, waits for them. Some see it. Some do not." She thought about the city, about the life she had left behind, and realized that she did not miss it. Not really. Here, in the quiet of the forest, she felt something she could not name. Freedom, perhaps, or understanding, or simply the raw truth of being alive. The Apache moved closer, sitting across from her by the stream. He did not reach for her hand, did not speak more than necessary. Yet she felt the connection, a deep, unspoken bond that seemed to transcend words. She knew that this encounter, this meeting in the wild, was only the beginning. Something had shifted, something permanent, and she could not turn back even if she wanted to. That night, as she lay in her small cabin listening to the wind rustle through the trees, she thought about him, about the words he had spoken. "Only if you want this," they replayed in her mind, a gentle echo that would not fade. She realized that life had offered her a choice, and she had to decide whether to embrace it. And deep down she knew that the answer would not be simple, and it would not be quick. But she also knew that she wanted to find out, to see where this path might lead. For the first time in her life, she felt the thrill of uncertainty, of a future that was not mapped out, not dictated by anyone else, but waiting to be discovered. Days passed, and the bride found herself returning to the edge of the forest almost every morning. She had come to expect the quiet, the rhythm of the trees, the soft sound of the wind through the leaves. But she also came to hope that she would see him again, the Apache man whose words had lingered in her mind. Only if you want this. She could not forget him, could not ignore the pull she felt toward the unknown life he represented. One afternoon she wandered farther than usual, crossing a small brook and stepping onto a narrow trail that twisted deeper into the forest. The light shifted as the sun moved, and the shadows of the trees danced on the ground like silent companions. She walked carefully, aware that this land was unfamiliar, wild, and unpredictable. She had learned to respect it, but she had not yet learned its full power. It was then that she realized she had lost her way. The landmarks she had been relying on, the shape of a tree, the curve of the stream, suddenly seemed unfamiliar. Panic fluttered in her chest, but she forced herself to breathe, to slow down. She had read about staying calm in the wilderness, about finding water and shelter, about leaving marks to retrace her steps. But none of the reading could prepare her for the feeling of being completely alone, deep in the forest, with the world she knew so far away. As the sun began to dip lower, casting long shadows across the trail, she heard the soft sound of footsteps behind her. Her heart jumped. She turned, expecting perhaps a deer, a rabbit, anything but him. And yet, there he was, the Apache man, moving quietly through the trees, his eyes alert, his expression calm. "You should not be here alone," he said as he had before, but this time his voice carried an urgency she could not ignore. I got lost," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "I didn't mean to." He held up a hand, stopping her. "It is all right. You are safe now." There was no impatience in his tone, only a quiet authority that made her feel both reassured and aware of her own vulnerability. He gestured for her to follow him, and she did so, stepping carefully along the path he seemed to know instinctively. As they walked, he moved with a grace that seemed almost effortless, reading the land like it were a book written in symbols only he could understand. She struggled to keep up, but he occasionally slowed his pace, allowing her to adjust. After a while, they reached a small clearing by a stream. The water was clear, flowing gently over smooth stones. The sun, now low in the sky, cast a golden light that made the entire scene feel like a painting. He knelt by the water, cupping some in his hands and bringing it to his lips. Then he gestured for her to do the same. "You need to stay hydrated," he said. "The forest is beautiful, but it can be unforgiving if you are not careful." She drank, grateful for the cool water, and looked around. Everything felt sharper, more alive. She had always loved nature in the city, the parks, the trees lining the streets. But this was different. This was wild and untamed, a world that existed independently of human rules and schedules. And now, because of him, she felt connected to it in a way she could not explain. He studied her for a moment, then spoke again. "You are brave to come here," he said. "But bravery is not enough. You must be careful, attentive, and willing to learn." "I want to learn," she said quickly. I want to understand." He nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "Then you must listen. Not just to me, but to the land itself. It will teach you more than I ever could." Over the next few hours, he began to show her the ways of the forest. He pointed out edible plants, explained how to read animal tracks, and taught her which streams were safe for drinking. He showed her how to build a small shelter with branches and leaves, how to start a fire without matches, and how to move quietly without startling wildlife. She absorbed everything with awe, amazed at his knowledge and skill, and increasingly aware of the depth of his connection to the land. As they worked together, she began to feel a bond forming. It was not sudden, not dramatic, but subtle, like the slow growth of a tree in spring. She noticed the way he paused when she struggled, the patience in his voice when he corrected her mistakes, the gentle encouragement that made her feel capable even when she doubted herself. And all the while, the words he had said that first day, "Only if you want this," echoed in her mind, gaining new meaning. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and purple. The forest seemed to glow, alive with colors and shadows that shifted with every movement. They sat by the stream, exhausted but exhilarated, sharing a simple meal he had prepared. The food was basic, but it tasted richer than anything she had eaten in the city, infused with the experience of creating it in this place, in this moment.
"You are stronger than you realize," he said quietly, looking at her with an intensity that made her catch her breath.
The forest respects strength, but strength alone is not enough. You must have courage, patience, and the willingness to accept what comes. I think I understand, she replied, her voice soft. I think I want to understand. He nodded, a faint smile appearing again. Then we will see. The journey back to her cabin was slow, guided by his knowledge and intuition. She realized how reliant she had become on him in just a few hours, and a strange mix of emotions stirred within her. Gratitude, admiration, and something she could not yet name. She was aware of the unspoken connection growing between them, but she was also aware of the vast differences in their worlds. Her life had been defined by schedules, by social rules, by the expectation of what a young woman should do. His life was different, wild, unpredictable, and governed by a code she was only beginning to glimpse. That night, she lay awake thinking about everything that had happened. She replayed the moments in the forest, his calm voice, the way he had moved, the intensity in his eyes. She realized that this was no ordinary encounter, no fleeting adventure. Something profound had shifted within her. She understood, perhaps for the first time, that life could offer experiences far beyond the safety and predictability she had always known. The next morning she returned to the same place, hoping to see him again. He was there as if he had been waiting for her, standing at the edge of the clearing. He did not speak immediately, simply observing her approach. "You came back," he said finally, his voice calm but carrying a hint of surprise. "I wanted to," she admitted. "I feel like there's so much I don't understand." "Bah. I want to learn." "Bah." He nodded, considering her words. Then he gestured for her to follow, and together they moved deeper into the forest. For the rest of the day he continued to teach her. Not just practical skills, but lessons about the land, about patience, and about the quiet power of observation. He showed her how the wind could reveal the presence of animals, how to find berries that were safe to eat, and how to sense changes in the weather before they arrived. Each lesson made her feel more capable, more alive, and more connected to the world around her. By evening, exhaustion had set in, but so had a sense of accomplishment and wonder. They sat by a fire he had built, watching the flames dance and listening to the sounds of the forest settling into night. The stars began to appear, scattered across the sky like diamonds, and she felt a sense of awe she had never experienced in the city. "You are learning quickly," he said, breaking the comfortable silence. "But remember, learning is only the beginning. Living here, truly living, requires more than knowledge. It requires trust, patience, and acceptance of the unexpected."
"I think I'm ready," she said softly, though she was not entirely sure.
"I want to try. I want to understand this life, even if it's hard." He looked at her, and for the first time she felt the weight of his gaze in a way that went beyond teaching. There was a depth there, an unspoken acknowledgement of the bond that was growing between them.
"Then we will see," he repeated, his words carrying both promise and caution.
That night, As she lay in her cabin, she felt the forest outside pressing in with its quiet, mysterious presence. She thought about the man who had rescued her, guided her, and shared his world with her. She thought about the words he had spoken. Only if you want this. They were no longer just a warning or a question. They were a challenge, an invitation to step fully into the unknown.
And for the first time, she realized that she wanted to.
The days grew longer, and with each sunrise she felt herself becoming more at home in the forest. What had once been strange and intimidating now felt familiar. She could recognize the songs of birds, the whisper of the wind through the trees, and the patterns of the animals moving quietly around her. Yet, despite her growing comfort, she knew that she was still an outsider in this world, a guest in a life she did not yet fully understand. He had begun to trust her more, letting her explore alone while keeping a careful watch from a distance. She knew he was always near, unseen but present, like the protective spirit of the land itself. She felt a strange sense of safety in his silent observation, yet it also made her aware of her own vulnerability. She could no longer pretend that this life was just an adventure. It was becoming real, and reality demanded choices. One morning, as the sun peeked through the trees, casting long, golden streaks on the forest floor, she decided to venture farther than she had ever gone before. She wanted to test herself, to see how much she had learned, and to confront the lingering doubts about whether she could truly survive here. She moved cautiously, scanning the ground for animal tracks, listening to the wind, and noting the position of the sun to keep her bearings. But the forest, as beautiful and alive as it was, had its own dangers. She had been so focused on her observations that she did not notice the hidden path that dropped steeply toward a narrow ravine. Suddenly, the ground gave way beneath her foot. She stumbled and fell, sliding down a slope and landing harshly on a bed of leaves and rocks. Pain shot through her ankle, and she realized with a pang of fear that she could not stand. Her heart pounded as she tried to assess the situation. She was alone, or at least she thought she was alone. Panic began to creep in, but she forced herself to breathe and remember everything he had taught her about staying calm. She tried to call out, but her voice came out weak and strained. The forest swallowed her cries, the wind carrying them away. She began to think the worst, that she would have to stay here, helpless, until someone found her. Then a figure appeared at the top of the slope, moving swiftly and silently, almost as if the forest itself had sent him. It was him, the Apache man. His eyes scanned the area, sharp and unflinching, and he reached her in moments that felt like minutes. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice calm but filled with concern.
"I think my ankle is twisted," she said, trying to hide the pain in her voice but failing. He crouched beside her, inspecting the injury with careful hands.
Panic or rush. Every movement was deliberate.
"You must not move too much," he said.
"I will carry you." She felt a mix of gratitude and embarrassment. She had been proud of how much she had learned, but now she realized that she was still inexperienced, still vulnerable. He lifted her with surprising ease, cradling her in his arms as if she weighed nothing, and began to move back through the forest with steady, confident steps. The journey was long, but he did not speak unnecessarily. She felt his presence, the quiet rhythm of his movement, and it gave her a strange comfort. When they finally reached a safer clearing, he gently lowered her to the ground and began preparing a splint for her ankle. He worked with skill, using strips of bark and soft cloth to secure her leg, and she marveled at how he could turn simple materials into something that would stabilize her injury. "You must rest," he said once he was finished. "And you must be patient. The forest will test you, but it also teaches you how to endure." She nodded, humbled by the experience. For the first time, she realized that this life was not just about adventure or curiosity. It was about responsibility, resilience, and trust. Dest. She had trusted him, and he had come for her. That trust had saved her. Over the next few days, she stayed in the clearing, recovering under his watchful eye. He brought her water and simple food, but he also gave her space to reflect. During the quiet moments, she thought about the choices she had made, the path she had taken, and the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. She had entered the forest seeking escape, but what she had found was something entirely different: connection, understanding, and the undeniable pull of a life that felt both foreign and natural. One evening, as the sky turned shades of orange and purple, he sat beside her, the fire crackling between them. He had been silent for some time, and she felt the weight of his gaze. "You have grown stronger," he said quietly. "But strength is not only in the body. It is in the heart, in the mind, in the courage to face the unknown." I think I understand," she replied, though she was not entirely sure. I feel different. I feel Barasp alive. He nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "Then you are ready for what comes next. But you must remember, nothing here is certain. Life in the forest is never predictable. It is full of challenges, and every choice has consequences." Breaths. She listened carefully, absorbing his words. She understood that the forest was not just a place. It was a teacher, and he was the guide. And she realized that she had a choice: to continue this journey, to embrace the unknown, or to return to the safety of her old life. The next morning brought the twist of fate that would change everything. She awoke to find that a storm had rolled in overnight. The wind howled through the trees, and rain pelted down in heavy sheets. The forest, which had seemed calm and serene, now felt wild and threatening. She could hear the sound of branches breaking, water rushing through small streams, and the distant rumble of thunder. He appeared quickly, moving through the storm with ease, and guided her to a small cave he had discovered earlier. They huddled together inside, listening to the storm, waiting for it to pass. Hours went by, and she realized that they were completely alone in the forest, facing the raw power of nature together. During that time, something shifted between them. She saw not just his strength, but his vulnerability, the way he cared for the land and for her, the way he endured without complaint. And she felt her own heart open in a way it had never done before. She realized that her feelings for him were more than curiosity or admiration. They were deep, sincere, and growing stronger with each passing moment. When the storm finally passed, the forest seemed renewed. The air was clean and crisp, and the sunlight streamed through the trees, illuminating the ground in patches of gold. They emerged from the cave together, and she felt a sense of unity, as if they had faced the forest and survived not just physically, but emotionally. He looked at her, his eyes reflecting both the intensity of the storm and the calm that followed. "You have chosen this," he said softly, repeating the words he had first spoken to her. "Only if you want this. The choice is yours. Bob." She met his gaze and nodded. Brass. She understood now that this life, with all its unpredictability and challenge, was something she wanted. Not because it was easy, not because it was safe, but because it was real. She wanted to embrace it, to learn from it, and to share it with him. In that moment, she realized that fate had guided her here. The fall, the injury, the storm, they had all led to a clarity she could not have found otherwise. She had been tested not to break her, but to show her the path she truly desired. From that day forward, their bond deepened. They moved together through the forest, working as a team, sharing knowledge and learning from one another. She grew stronger, more confident, and more attuned to the rhythms of the land. He, in turn, began to show her parts of his life and his past, stories of the forest, of his people, and of the lessons he had learned over the years. Through every challenge, every twist of fate, she felt the truth of his words. Life was not about avoiding danger or seeking comfort. It was about choosing to face the unknown with courage, trust, and willingness. And she had chosen. By the end of part 3, she was no longer the same woman who had arrived in the forest days ago. She had been tested, humbled, and awakened to a life she could never have imagined. And though the future was still uncertain, she knew one thing for certain. She wanted this life, this journey, and this man beside her, only if she truly wanted it. The forest had changed for her. What had once been strange and intimidating now felt like home. She moved through the trees with a quiet confidence, her senses alert to every sound, every movement, every shift in the wind. She had learned to read the signs of the land, the tracks of animals, the whispers of the trees, the subtle differences in the earth underfoot. She had learned to survive. She had learned to live. But more than that, she had learned to trust herself and to trust him. The Apache man had become more than a guide. He was her protector, her teacher, and quietly the center of her heart. She realized she had come to rely on him in ways she had never relied on anyone before. His presence brought a calm that was both comforting and challenging. He demanded respect, patience, and awareness, and in return, he gave knowledge, safety, and the kind of understanding that could only come from shared experience and mutual choice. She remembered the first words he had spoken to her. "Only if you want this." They had haunted her thoughts, guiding her, reminding her that everything in this life required conscious choice. It was not simply fate or chance. It was willingness, courage, and the decision to step fully into the unknown. And she had chosen. Now, days and weeks later, she realized that choice had changed everything. She had grown stronger, braver, and more attuned to the world around her. She had faced fear, pain, and uncertainty, and she had survived. But the greatest transformation had been within herself. She felt capable of making decisions that mattered, of taking responsibility for her life, and of embracing a future that she could not predict. One morning the forest was quiet, except for the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant call of a hawk. She walked along a familiar path, feeling the soft earth beneath her feet. He appeared beside her silently, as he always seemed to do, moving without a sound, as if the forest itself were making way for him. She smiled a small, genuine smile, and he returned it with a nod that carried both warmth and recognition. They moved together through the forest, speaking little, letting the silence speak for them. Their connection had deepened without words, forged in shared challenges, mutual respect, and unspoken understanding. She had learned his ways, and he had accepted her presence, her questions, her mistakes, and her growth. They were equals in a strange, extraordinary world that existed outside of time, beyond the constraints of her old life. By midday, they reached a clearing where the sun broke through the canopy in golden rays. She paused to breathe in the warmth, to feel the light on her face, and to savor the sense of freedom that only this wild, untamed place could give her. He stood a few steps behind, watching her with a quiet intensity. "You have chosen this life," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You have faced challenges, and you have learned. You are ready to live fully in this world, with all its beauty and danger."
I am ready, she replied, her voice steady.
I want this life. I want to live it, to learn, to be part of it. And I want to be with you. He looked at her for a long moment, his dark eyes searching hers. Then he nodded slowly. "Only if you truly want this," he said, repeating the words that had begun this journey. "Because once you choose, There is no turning back. This is not a life for hesitation or doubt. She nodded, understanding the gravity of his words. She had considered it, questioned it, and felt the fear of leaving everything familiar behind. But she had chosen. And now, there was no hesitation in her heart. Together, they began to plan the next stage of her life in the forest. She would continue to learn from him, but she would also take responsibility for her own survival, her own decisions. They built a small shelter together, simple yet sturdy, blending with the natural surroundings. She learned to gather food, prepare it, and store it safely. She learned to move silently, to watch and listen, to anticipate the movements of animals and the changes in weather. Each skill strengthened her confidence and deepened her respect for the life she had chosen. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. They shared stories, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. She discovered the history of the land, the stories of his people, and the wisdom he had gained through years of living in harmony with nature. Grasp. She learned that life in the forest was not just survival. It was connection, understanding, and the cultivation of patience and awareness. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant colors over the horizon, they sat by a fire, the warmth of the flames contrasting with the cool air. She looked at him, feeling a wave of gratitude and affection that she could no longer contain. "You have taught me so much," she said softly. "Not just how to live here, but how to be strong, how to trust myself, and how to see the world differently. I never knew life could be like this."
I smiled. Rare, gentle.
The land teaches what it will, and the forest chooses who it will. You have proven yourself. You are no longer a visitor. You are part of this life, part of this world.
Her heart swelled with emotion.
She realized that she had not just adapted, she had transformed. The city, the predictable life she had left behind, felt like a distant memory, a world she could visit but no longer belonged to. Here, in the forest, she had found herself, found freedom, and found the person who had guided her to it. As the fire crackled, he spoke again, his voice low and steady. "We will face challenges, as the forest always does. But we will face them together. You have chosen this life, and you have chosen me. That choice is what matters most." She reached for his hand, a simple gesture yet filled with profound meaning. "I have chosen," she said. "And I will continue to choose every day this life, this path, and you." The nights in the forest became a time for reflection and connection. They would lie beneath the stars, listening to the wind and the distant calls of animals. She would tell him her thoughts, her fears, her dreams, and he would listen, offering guidance, wisdom, and understanding. Each conversation, each shared silence strengthened the bond between them, creating a partnership built on respect, trust, and choice. In time, the townspeople began to notice her presence in the forest. Some were curious, some skeptical, but all were intrigued by the story of the woman who had come from the city and chosen a life so different from their own. She did not seek approval or attention. She had found a world that mattered more than societal expectation or conventional life. She had chosen authenticity, and with that choice came peace and fulfillment, the phrase that had begun it all. "Only if you want this," remained central to her journey. It was not just a warning or an invitation, it was a guiding principle. Life in the forest, like love and trust, could only be embraced willingly. It could not be forced, imposed, or assumed. She had wanted it, and in doing so had stepped into a life of freedom, growth, and connection. Seasons changed, bringing new challenges and joys. She learned to predict the weather, to follow the migrations of animals, and to respect the delicate balance of the ecosystem around her. She and the Apache man worked together to maintain their home, share responsibilities, and continue learning from each other. Their bond deepened with every shared experience, every challenge overcome, every quiet moment of understanding. One spring morning, as the forest bloomed in vibrant colors and the air filled with the songs of birds, she realized how far she had come. She looked at the man who had guided her, protected her, and shared his world with her, and she felt a profound gratitude. She had arrived in the forest seeking adventure, curiosity, or escape. But what she had found was life itself, raw, beautiful, challenging, and deeply meaningful. She knelt by a stream, cupping the water in her hands, and reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She thought about the fears she had felt when she first arrived, the uncertainty, the doubts, and the choices that had led her to this moment. And she smiled, knowing that she had chosen wisely, that she had embraced life fully, and that she had found a home not just in the forest, but in her own heart. When she looked up, he was there, standing silently behind her. He did not speak immediately. He simply observed, as he always did, with a quiet intensity that made her feel both seen and understood. Then finally he spoke. "You have chosen well," he said, his voice filled with quiet pride. "Listen, and now we will live well, together, as equals, as partners, as part of this world we share." She rose and smiled, feeling the warmth of his presence and the certainty of her choice. "Yes," she said softly, "together." And so, life continued in the forest. Not perfect, not easy, but real, meaningful, and deeply connected. They faced challenges, celebrated victories, and embraced the unpredictable beauty of their life together. Every day was a choice, every moment a testament to courage, trust, and willingness. And through it all, the words that had guided her from the very beginning, "Only if you want this," remained a reminder of the power of choice, the strength of the heart, and the life-changing journey that begins when one dares to embrace the unknown.